Now on to a story that's dominated the headlines all week, the BBC's row with Gary Lineker. Kicking off with a tweet by Lineker in reference to Rishi Sunak's new small boats bill. Lineker wrote, "This is just an immeasurably cruel policy directed at the most vulnerable people in language that is not dissimilar to that used by Germany in the 1930s. And I'm out of order? But is he? Well, to discuss this with me, I have lawyer, writer and legal editor for Spiked Online, Luke Gettos, and historian and journalist Nigel Jones. Thank you both for joining me. So I'm going to come to you first, Nigel. Is this a freedom of speech issue? Should Gary Lineker be able to say whatever he wants on his own private Twitter feed?
Well, freedom of speech is never absolute. You can't say or you can't shout fire in a crowded theatre. But as far as I understand it, Lineker has broken the rules, the guidance rules that the BBC sets to ensure its own impartiality on this occasion, as he has several times in the past.
So this is really a contractual issue. Luke, is that not a fair point that, you know, Gary Lineker is paid an awful lot of money by the BBC. He signed a contract saying he will preserve impartiality on his social media presence. Why is it that people are now saying that free speech absolutists ought to defend him?
Well, I think on the one hand, he was a contractor. He was subject to a contract with our national broadcaster, and what he said was unbelievably stupid. It was a foolish thing to say. But I can understand why the BBC has concerns, and even if you are a free speech absolutist, as I like to think of myself as, we would never argue that free speech is completely without consequence. Indeed, that's why free speech matters. You stand by what you say. And what you say is held up against you. You have to defend it in the public sphere. And the fact is that what Gary Lineker said was indefensible. I think he should be allowed to say it, but he can't be expected to proceed with absolutely no consequences arising from what he's saying. The BBC have taken an unusual decision. I mean, I think it is... I said on Thursday on another podcast that they would never...
I think we're losing Luke there. Let's bring Nigel in here. Can I ask you, Nigel, about this idea of, what he actually said, and why is it so offensive?
It is extremely offensive, particularly to the victims of Nazism and the Holocaust, to compare a democratically elected government, such as we have in this country, with Hitler's government in the 30s. That is just crass, completely ignorant, historically ignorant, and offensive.
But is there a difference? I mean, could it not be the case that what we should do, therefore, is criticise him, Nigel, rather than just try and get him sacked?
I don't think he should be automatically sacked for that. And I did criticise him in an article, and people have criticised him. I'm not going to take a view on whether the BBC should sack him or not, but this isn't a first offence. He has frequently gone out of order and broken BBC rules on impartiality. And whether he's a BBC employee or is just a freelance on a contract, then the BBC must decide for themselves whether he goes or stays.
So let's talk about this idea of the BBC impartiality, clause. Is it right that they should have that? I mean, shouldn't it be the case that the BBC say, obviously on air, our presenters should be impartial, but in their own private Twitter...
No, that would be very schizophrenic to be one person on air and completely another person in your social media profiles. That's ridiculous. You are an integrated one single person with your views, and we all know now what Lineker's views are.
Yes.
He's welcome to say that to his however many followers, millions of followers he's got, but he is the face or one of the faces of the BBC, and he should be more responsible. And even one of his own close friends, I believe Andrew Castle, said this morning that he knows that Lineker has regretted making this remark about comparing Nazis with our government, but I don't think he will go public and admit that he was wrong.
Well, I suppose a lot of people would say, well, he's a football commentator, so, we don't look to him for political prowess. We're not really worried about what he thinks about politics.
And that would be fine. I would go to him for advice on football, but he shouldn't speak so publicly and so influentially about a subject that he clearly knows nothing about, i.e. the history of the Third Reich.
I mean, that's clear, isn't it, that he doesn't... I mean, this comparison was absolutely
It's
ludicrous.
absolutely absurd, and it's also offensive and insulting to the two politicians who are pushing this measure to try and reduce or control illegal immigration, Rishi Sunak and Home Secretary Suella Braverman, because I'm not sure whether Lineker's noticed, they are both the children of immigrants. albeit legal immigrants.
Yes, he seems not to have made this distinction, which Suella Braverman was very clear in making, in terms of the distinction between the illegal migration and those who were trafficked here,
yes,
and those who are fleeing war and persecution, which she explicitly said in her statement she wanted to help those people. I don't remember the Nazis ever saying that kind of thing.
No. I mean, there is absolutely no comparison. And Suella Braverman has not called illegal immigrants and compared them to rats like the Nazis did to the Jews, for example.
Yes.
Suella Braverman is also, I believe, married to a Jewish husband, and that just adds to the offence that Lineker caused.
Yes. I believe we've got Luke Gittos back now down the line, so maybe if I could just ask Luke, where do you stand on what Lineker actually said? And, you know, you've said that it was an indefensible thing, but what's so wrong with someone on their own private Twitter saying that kind of thing? Because, as I said to Nigel, this is a football commentator, not a political commentator.
Well, that's true, but he is a football commentator on our national broadcaster, and I think that has to be taken into account. I also think it's a shame that we've spent this week talking about Gary Lineker when we do face a real problem in the channel, and I think it would be useful to talk about the substance of this issue and whether Suella Braverman's plans fix the problem. Because I think, oddly, it fits both sides, the way we deal with this problem at the moment. Both sides are happy for this to be a culture war-y issue that ends up being unresolved. The Tories' legislative plan is not going to solve the problem. Suella Braverman herself said this plan has a 50-50% chance of being stopped by the courts. This is the second of their legislative proposals that they proceeded with knowing that it's not going to work. Witness, for example, the Rwanda partnership that was held at the European Court on a previous occasion. So neither side want to solve this problem, and both sides are very happy for it to be battered around in this political way. I think really we need to recognise that the small boats are a problem. The Tories' plans are objectionable. Lineker is right to raise the fact that they are wrong. They go against a number of key tenets of our legal system: detaining people without representation, subjecting them to summary deportation. These are things that within our English justice system we are not used to and we should not welcome. But that's not to say that we should adopt the opposite view, which has seen reams of human rights lawyers over the last week getting dangerously close to using things like the Refugee Convention and the European Convention on Human Rights to defend the absolutely appalling trade in human misery, which is the human trafficking which takes place across the Channel. We've got to find a practical solution to the boat problem, and neither side seem interested in doing so.
We're just short on time, so I'm going to bring in Nigel Jones there just to ask, what do you make of Luke Gittos's view there, that this is actually a distraction, and actually all of this conversation about Gary Lineker's tweet has effectively trivialised what is a very significant debate that we need to be having?
Yes, that's true. But that's just a consequence of our celebrity culture, in which we give the views of celebrities, albeit in this case completely ignorant and ill-informed views, perhaps more weight than they deserve.
Very well put. Well, thanks both for joining me, Luke Gittos and Nigel Jones. Really appreciate it.